How thoroughly do you wash your hands? Do you like things organised? Maybe you overcheck things. You might even call yourself a little bit OCD. But what is it really like to live with obsessive compulsive disorder?
I always felt like I was on autopilot a little bit.
I probably developed some sort of agoraphobia. I didn't want to be outside. Everything was too much of a trigger for me.
I had some really, really dark times when I was physically ill, where I thought, I just don't want to be alive anymore. But I've had the exact same thoughts with my OCD.
My name's Mariella Southern, and I want to find out if there's more to the disorder than people think. I'm going to find out about the types of OCD people think they know, as well as the ones they haven't even heard of. The World Health Organization ranks OCD amongst the top 10 most disabling illnesses, which might sound surprising to people that think it's all about being clean and organised. OCD is characterised by ego-dystonic thoughts, which are the opposite of what you really want. They oppose your morals and who you are. So someone with cleaning compulsions might have intrusive thoughts that they're going to get ill, which is not what they want.
So OCD is a problem where people have obsessions, which are intrusive thoughts, images, urges, come into their minds, and they're things that they don't want there. And those things cause distress. So very often that's anxiety, but sometimes other feelings can come in like disgust. And because those images, thoughts feel so kind of horrible, then the person uses a compulsion to push those thoughts away, or make sure that the thing that they're thinking about doesn't happen. That can be physical things they do, like walking up and down, or getting up and down, or hand washing, or checking. But it can also be things that they're doing in their minds that you might not see. So it could be counting in your mind, or praying, or having a good thought to cancel out a bad thought. So both physical and mental actions, as well as seeking reassurance from other people, or looking things up on the internet, and also avoiding things. So not touching the door handle, or getting somebody else to check that the door is locked rather than you. And the compulsions, they help that person for a little bit. They feel like better for a little bit, but it's only ever temporary relief before it gets triggered again. So they go round and round in cycles.
To learn more about OCD, I wanted to talk to people who have lived experiences with the disorder. So I went to Hartford to meet author and journalist David Adam. Since the release of his book, The Man Who Couldn't Stop, over 10 years ago, David is still contacted regularly by people around the world who have similar experiences. Would you be able to share with us your sort of first experience with OCD, maybe before you even knew that it was OCD?
I can remember the exact moment. I could tell you what I was wearing, I could tell you what the weather was like. It was a real turning point. It was 1991, it was the summer, I was on holiday from university, I'd been out with some friends, had a couple of drinks, I was walking home to my parents' house, and I just had this thought, what I now know to be an intrusive thought, that I could have HIV and AIDS. It was then seen as very much a mysterious plague that was going to kill lots of people.
But it's spreading. So protect yourself. Don't die of ignorance.
I couldn't make that thought go away, which was very, very odd, because we're so used to our thoughts just coming and going. And this thought was still there the next day. And it came with all of the, associated tension and anxiety and fear and misery that kind of thought would have caused anyone at the time. And that just sort of got me into a loop, I suppose, a doom loop, that I was then trying to convince myself this wasn't true, which then made the thought come back, and very quickly it became a cycle that consumed me. Over time I would go and I would donate blood, because at the time there was a stigma around even getting tested for HIV. There was all these rumours that it would stop you getting life insurance and things like this. So I gave blood and it came back, absolutely fine. There was a helpline you could call. I would ring the helpline and ask them. If I cut my finger on a piece of glass, I would worry that someone else had also cut their finger on that same piece of glass, and they'd got HIV infected blood onto the glass, which had come into me. So I was kind of asking experts whether I could contract HIV in those ways, and I knew they were going to say no, but I wanted them to tell me that answer.
How long would you say that sort of reassurance actually put you at ease for before the thoughts crept in again?
I mean, I would say seconds, probably. Very quickly you find yourself finding a gap that your brain can exploit to kind of undermine all of the reassurance that you've received.
I also travelled to London to meet public speaker and mental health advocate Sean, who does work at schools, colleges and other corporations raising awareness about OCD.
So OCD thoughts are absolutely unwanted, and if I give you an example, at my absolute worst, I couldn't go over a bridge, for example. The bridge would be like a trigger for me because I thought, I'm going to kill myself. So that was the whole suicide OCD. Anytime I went near a bridge, my brain would just be screaming, kill yourself, kill yourself, kill yourself, jump off of a bridge. And there's things that happen in your body. So your nervous system feels like it's firing up. And I often describe it to people as, have you ever had an urge or a reflex to do something and you know you can control it, you might not feel like you can control it, but for somebody with OCD, when the feeling of an urge or a reflex comes, it almost reinforces this idea that you might act on that intrusive thought. So for someone with OCD, it's not as easy to go, I'm going to ignore the thought or I'm just going to walk over the bridge. It's a lot more complex than people think.
OCD encourages you to think that, yeah, not for me. It actually is a real situation for me. It actually is a real risk. I know that other people who fear this have got OCD, but not in my case. My case is actually, there is a genuine risk.
What happens is essentially your brain is misfiring on particular stimuli. The stimuli for myself being the bridge, the stimuli could be so many other themes. Research has shown time and time again that people with OCD are the least likely to act on their intrusive thoughts. Their thoughts scare them. That's why they get so much anxiety, so much dread. A lot of people with OCD are more likely to be suicidal, more likely to be depressed, because the thoughts are not what they want, and they're scared the thoughts mean a lot more than they actually do.
I always felt like I was on autopilot a little bit. I wasn't really present. It's a bit like, I think people watching this will have a parallel narrative in their head, that they're concentrating, but they're also thinking about something else. And usually that secondary narrative is variable, where in my case it was always the same, and it always came with a crippling fear and anxiety.
I've had countless themes. I've had homosexual OCD, so the fear that I might be gay, because growing up in a conservative Caribbean Christian family, which I describe obviously as the 3 C's, that was a crime in many ways, actually. To be gay, that was absolutely the worst thing. I'm not gay, but the mere thought that I could be was terrifying. So I had to work on some of that. I've had false memory, so question things I've done in the past. Guilt and shame, so intense feelings of guilt, intense feelings of shame, like feeling the need to confess mistakes that I've made. I've also had depression, the fear of anxiety, suicidal OCD. I've had so many different themes to the point where it's become exhausting. I've also had harm OCD, which is another type that people don't often speak about. So the fear that I might hurt people, I might hit someone. Incest OCD. It's the themes have bounced around, but it's really important for people to actually understand the themes don't matter. They all get treated the exact same.
Sexual obsessions are really, really common. That can kind of vary from like worries about your relationship and whether you really love your partner, through to things that feel like sexually like repugnant to you. So worries about what if I'm a paedophile, what if I want to have sex with animals or dead people. So things that are kind of socially taboo, they're repugnant. And people often don't talk about them because they're so ashamed.
Hello. Like Sean, Evie from Surrey has also struggled with various themes throughout her life. 2 of her most crippling have been relationship OCD, when she experienced constant tormenting doubts and questioning about her relationships, and POCD, also known as paedophilia OCD, which is characterised by an overwhelming fear of, what if I'm attracted to children?
The first thought I ever had was when I just saw a child in a pram, and I thought, oh, that's a really sweet child. And then instantly my brain said, why do you think that? It must mean you're a paedophile. I had young cousins at the time, and I'd be excited to go and see them around my grandma's house, but then I started avoiding it because I thought it was a danger. I thought, oh my God, what if I'm around them and the thoughts are worse? So my compulsions were sort of mainly avoidance.
Some of the ones that were the most laborious for me in terms of compulsions was avoidance. Really and truly, I didn't leave the house. I probably developed some sort of agoraphobia. I didn't want to be outside. Everything was too much of a trigger for me. Sexual assault was a really big one. That was one of my big fears. So when I sat on a train, for example, and let's say I saw a woman in front of me and I was having a particular thought, I could just feel my body start sweating. And my body just wanted to panic and just to get off the train. I've had thoughts about hitting babies, throwing children. And when I go to schools and I do talks, one of the questions I always ask people is, have you ever thought about jumping in front of a bus? And everyone's like, yeah. Or have you ever thought about punching an old lady? They're like, yeah. So it's a way to get people to understand that we all have intrusive thoughts. Just for some of us, it brings us a lot more anxiety. I avoided my female friends as well because I was like, no, I don't want to do it. And what was really interesting was when I opened up to my female friends, they were so shocked. And I said to them, why are you not scared? They're like, it's kind of the opposite of who you are. But for me, I'm like, but aren't you scared at the mere possibility someone has these thoughts?
I'd say a huge misconception is that these thoughts are enjoyed by people when it's the total opposite.
Evie's intrusive thoughts started when she was 14. At 16, she was diagnosed with Hodgkin lymphoma, a cancer of the lymph nodes. This was the only time the thoughts stopped.
So I was treated and I got the all clear, and it was amazing. But I did struggle to actually enjoy getting the all clear and feeling cancer free, because then the thoughts came back. And then I found myself kind of wanting to be ill again in the weirdest way, because in my head that was the only thing that would stop the OCD. So I had some very interesting thoughts around thinking, well, if I was ill again physically, then people will understand it and I won't feel so lost, and then the thoughts won't come back.
You think there is quite a massive difference in how people respond to physical ill health versus mental ill health?
Definitely. I had some really, really dark times when I was physically ill, where I thought, I just don't want to be alive anymore. But I've had the exact same thoughts for my OCD, and I still do now to this day. But because people can't see that, and they may just think you're overreacting, or you're just overthinking, you just calm down. It is a lot different. With something like cancer, obviously it's so well known, and it's obviously an awful disease, and people are kind of there to offer their sympathy and understanding. Even if they haven't had it, they know someone who's had it, or they kind of understand from a media perspective more about it. So definitely people are far more understanding and far more sympathetic. With OCD, it's something that's ongoing, so I can't cure this, I can only try and make it better. But I think it's trying to get out there that actually, for me, they've both been as bad as each other, and I really do mean that.
Canadian author Stamatina wrote about several OCD themes she's experienced. One of her most prominent is called moral scrupulosity.
It's essentially just being, hyper scrutinizing of yourself when it comes to moral matters, when it comes to your interactions with people, when it comes to, as I like to call your moral footprint, right? The ways in which that you're impacting another person, the ways in which you're impacting the world, your environment around you, and kind of just holding yourself to a very, very impossibly high standard, and having this very kind of tyrannical barometer, always monitoring your every action, your every expression, trying to make sure that you didn't cause harm essentially to another, or that you're kind of backtracking to mitigate the consequences, so to speak, which we know how impossible that is. And I think there's a certain amount of healthy guilt that someone can possess, and then there's the extent of guilt that actually becomes a genuine impediment to you being able to move forward. And I think that someone with healthy guilt can recognize if they've wronged someone, and still be able to put one foot in front of the other.
Despite not growing up in an overly religious family, Stamatina also developed religious scrupulosity, an overwhelming feeling of needing to please God. However, during the pandemic, there was one theme that took over her life: contamination.
I always think back to this one episode during the pandemic where I had this cleaning spell for about 8 hours. I remember, I think it was that day where I'd showered for upwards of 3 hours, and then it was around 9 p.m. And I just remember from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. for those 8 hours, how grueling it was. I got out of my shower and I stepped foot on the carpet outside of my shower. I was trying to walk back to my room, but the process of just walking from my bathroom to my bedroom took took hours. It felt like everything around me was like lava, and I couldn't step foot on the ground. I don't know what possessed me in that moment, but I felt like everything was contaminated. I was trying to brush my teeth. I thought I was expelling aerosols in the air with my brushing of my teeth. So I remember I had worn a mask at some point to just brush my teeth, and I would kind of put my toothbrush under my mask and then kind of keep the sides covered. It's so hard to actually look back on. It feels very blurry, and also just like time really froze for me in that moment. And I had episodes of disinfecting my hair. I'm sure that was one of them, with an actual spray bottle of disinfectant. I remember I had, put plastic bags over my feet. I took myself to bed. I put my hair in a certain position where I had to tie it in a certain way so that my hoodie would cover it fully. And I just remember lying down in my bed after those 8 hours of just kind of trying to clean everything around me, trying to make sense of where to step without contaminating myself or contaminating the house, and how to breathe. And I just remember the exhaustion I felt, and also just a sense of doom. It really felt like I couldn't conceive of how to get out of this.
While there's no direct cause of OCD, antidepressants have proven helpful in treating the disorder by raising serotonin levels. The main therapeutic approach is CBT, or cognitive behavioural therapy, with ERP, exposure and response prevention.
That is a treatment with a lot of evidence, which is all about whatever it is that OCD is making you worry about, finding a way to face that fear. So you're building up a relationship with your therapist, and together you're kind of getting to learn about the OCD, how it works, what its tricks are, what happens to your body when you stay in a situation that makes you feel anxious and you face your fear.
I was discussing sort of the ERP hierarchy with my therapist. We were at the point where we were discussing, the times that I would take to shower. And at some point we had just established that it would be, the exposure of the night would be to take, a 10-minute shower.
At the time I went for therapy, I had a baby daughter, and I was doing DIY or whatever, and I always end up with little cuts. And I was anxious about, by now my intrusive thoughts had spread to me having HIV and me passing it on to her. The homework with CBT is a bit like deliberately exposing yourself to what it is you're afraid of. So if you're afraid of germs, in the rubbish bin, you have to actually rummage through the rubbish bin, to expose yourself to that. And then the response prevention is, you don't wash your hands. Yeah. So in my case, it wasn't very easy to deliberately re-expose me to some of these fears. So they said, okay, next time you do cut yourself, I want you to find your baby and basically just smear your blood all over her. There was a woman in my therapy group who had similar thoughts about HIV transmission, and she was worried about passing it on to her husband. So her homework was to go home and have sex with her husband, to basically expose herself to the fear.
What's next for OCD?
Services is really important. We need better treatment. So some people are treatment resistant. We need better medication.
We still need more awareness, because if we can treat people earlier on, that is going to be incredibly useful.
We need national campaigns, proper campaigns, with billboards such as, I had feelings I was going to harm someone, but I realised I had OCD. Capture people's attention, get them to understand.
What advice is there for people struggling with their OCD?
Accessing help, going to your GP.
You do deserve help. A lot of people with OCD feel like they don't deserve help. They feel like they're the worst person, they feel like they're evil, they feel like they're horrible people. I want you to understand that you're not.
The more open you are, the more people that are willing to help you. And actually, I've met a few people through my life who have the same OCD or similar. And actually, as much as it's not going to cure me, it definitely helps feeling understood. And I think that's massively important. It makes you feel less lonely.
During the toughest points of my OCD, that's actually when the biggest breakthrough for me came through.
Everybody who has recovered from OCD felt like you're feeling now. I know you think that it's not like that you're different somehow, but it's really not. It's everybody. You have a connection with a whole community of people who, many of whom have gone through this and have got out the other side. So it is possible for you as well.
Well, it appears there's much more to the disorder than we may have originally thought. OCD is not just neat.